Welcome to the Spirit School of Ministry podcast, where we discuss discipleship in your everyday life. Hi, welcome to the Spirit School of Ministry podcast. I'm Pastor David Lien. I'm here with Pastor Bob Wilk and with Liz Jones. And we're excited for today's podcast, maybe because we're gluttons for punishment.
Yes.
But this podcast is about the trial of your faith.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
So good.
Pastor Bob, you've been through some trials. You've been through some tests.
Just one for the last 68 years.
What would you say it means if I were to ask you, what's it mean that your faith is going to be tried?
Well, let's go deep right from the beginning. I think a lot of people, they look at the trial of their faith as something really horrible. I didn't say it was easy, right? Because the trials of our faith can be hard. Mm-hmm. But they're not always horrible. And I think the reason is that people many times, including myself, when I say people, don't recognize the difference between the trial of our faith, which is a good thing, actually. It's a testing, it's a strengthening, and we will discuss all this, I'm sure, because we talk about that. And actual temptation, trials that we bring on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And, because of sin in our lives, stupidity. Did I just say stupidity? Are you allowed to say that nowadays?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah. So I think it's also recognizing a trial for what it is and then recognizing its purpose.
Okay.
And not having that be lost on you.
Okay. What would you say, Liz?
What is the trial of our faith?
Yeah, what's that mean? That your faith is gonna be
it's
tried?
a testing.
Yeah.
It's like whenever you're developing something, at certain points you got to kind of test it out to see if it's working. And I think it's easy to equate it to like physical strength training, right? That there's as you're building what you can carry, there is a proving that happens by weight that gets placed, right? So there's a development that happens as you learn how to operate with things that are developing. They're developing your faith. Mm-hmm. It's not, trials are never sent to break your faith.
Right.
They're designed to strengthen it and to develop it.
Okay.
So it is a little different perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think
like,
it's always faith muscle building. That's the way I always look at trials. I said I always look at trials when I'm looking at them very academically.
Yes.
Okay, because honestly, when you're in the middle of a trial, you don't look at it very academically. You sense it, you feel it, and you feel the work that's happening. And it's work. It's not simple. It's it can hurt, but it can be great at the same time. Yeah. And when you come through the trial of your faith, it's how it's the work that it produces in you. Much like, thank you for fixing that. I bunk things around.
I just want to hear you.
Yeah, I know. Someone would like to, I'm sure. But this is the trial of my faith, this microphone in front of my face. You know what I'm saying?
Or was that a temptation because you did it?
Yeah.
Or was it stupidity?
It was a temptation.
I think you're so right, though. It's easy to like look at it, like reading the Bible, the trial of your faith,
Yes.
We rejoice in our tribulations. Like they actually believe that. But for us, it's hard. Yeah. It's easy to do when you're looking at someone else. And they're like, this is a good thing. It's building your faith. I know it feels hard.
Well, you have to do that in
the
Old English also when you do that. The King James.
Yes.
Oh, the Lord sent this to you as the trial of your faith, and you'll come through it in flying colors.
Right. Yeah, but when you're looking at someone else, you're like, this is a good work. Like the Lord's doing a good work in you, and He's stretching you, and it's good. And then what happens? You're like, what did I do? Like, was there sin in my life? What's wrong? Like, did I open a door somewhere? How do I get out of this? Why are you doing this to me? It's so hard. It's easy to lose perspective when it's in your own life.
We try to sanitize it.
Yeah.
Right. And make, that's nice. And this too will pass. It's like, what happens if that passing takes a long time?
Yeah. That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a hard
that's
question.
with you your whole life. It's a thorn in the flesh that you plead 3 times that it'll be taken away from you.
Yeah.
And it is not, because it's taking away your conceit. That's it's within you. So
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Poor Paul.
Stuff.
Poor Paul.
Yeah.
His trial.
Thinking about these trials, and one of the passages that we were thinking about before the podcast was James 1:2-8, where he says to count it all joy because the trial of your faith will produce steadfastness.
Yeah.
And what he says is to ask God for wisdom in the midst of the trial, and to ask him really to put in perspective what you're going through. And he says, then ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. And what I took from that was that what trials are, okay, well, God sends it as a trial to prove you, to refine you. Satan may be an instrument of that. Right. He's trying to break you. He's trying to create doubt and double-mindedness in your life through the trial that you're going through. That's why it's the trial of your faith. It's your faith that's at stake. Right. It's not, there's nothing else is being tried other than your allegiance to God and your faith, your trust in him. When Peter walked on the water, he had to keep his eyes on Jesus. He couldn't be double-minded. He couldn't be diverted from that. The minute that he began to sink. And James, I think, uses that metaphor of walking on the sea, being tossed to and fro. And, there's so many trials that can come upon us, whether it's from the inside, our souls being tried, or whether it's from the outside. Maybe there's pressure coming at us from the outside. But the goal that Satan has is to create double-mindedness and to create doubt. The goal that God has is to polish up and solidify the faith. So it's,
Yeah, I think it's such an important point too, because I think sometimes we go into things start to happen to us and we're like, is this God or is this the devil? Right. And it's like, you're trying to am I supposed to fight this? Am I supposed to yield to this? What am I supposed to do here? Who's doing this to me? And sometimes it's both, it's both of them. Because the devil has obviously the purpose of destruction, but the Lord will allow those things because he knows it's not going to break us. He knows it's what we need to grow. It's like when, Peter said, or Jesus said to Peter, Satan has desired you to sift you as wheat, right? And Satan is trying to use that process to destroy and to break down. But Jesus knows the sifting of wheat is actually a very good process that separates the life from the things that are prohibiting life or that are unfruitful, right? So he's not saying, Peter, Satan has desired to test you and to try you and to break you, and I'm going to rescue you out of that. He's saying, I'm actually going to use that process, but I'm going to pray for you in the middle of it. I'm going to intercede for you so that your faith doesn't fail, because it was a trial of his faith that was coming to him.
And he said that to him before the trial.
Yeah.
And God's sending his word, and maybe he's sending you this podcast if you're listening, so that you have an expectation that God will permit trials in your life. He might even suggest them. It's like we were like, how do we deal with trials? I wish there was a whole book in the Bible written about how to deal with the testing of faith. The book of Job, or Job as you might call it, right? Yeah. But in the book of Job, God's up in heaven and Satan's minding his own business, and God says, hey, Satan, have you considered my servant Job? He loves me for me. And Job says, no, he doesn't love you for you.
Or Satan says.
Yeah. Satan says he doesn't love you for you. He loves you because you blessed his life. Take everything away from him, right? And God says, all right, go ahead, because he knew Job's heart. And that's always what faith. That's what's going on. It's this heavenly battle. Like when you're in something that seems so insignificant or so meaningless, it's heaven's watching that. It's almost a spectator sport of heaven, that Satan's trying to do one thing, but God's trying to do another thing. And if you don't have that expectation, you don't know how to view. You can't count your trial as joy. You count it as God's taking things from me.
Yeah.
God's doing this to me.
And I think also people confuse joy with happy. I don't actually believe you have to be totally happy during the trial of your faith. Matter of fact, you might be fairly sad, because there may be things that are coming upon your life that are fairly sad. Job, I don't know what God didn't ask him to be happy about, all the things that are coming down in his life, losing family
that would
and
have
friends
been
and
really
people
abnormal if he was happy about that
Yeah,
stuff.
very strange. And I think a lot of Christians, they approach, the trial of your faith, let's just be joyful now. And it's like,
rejoice, brother.
Rejoice. Well, they're confusing joy, right, with happy. And, that's why, Jesus is like, okay with weeping with those who weep and, rejoicing with those who rejoice. There's a time for it. And sometimes when a person is going through the trial of their faith, that's not the time to just go, okay, let's just get through it. Let's just white knuckle and tough this one through, gang.
Right.
We'll do it. You can do it because you're so good in God and you have the word. And maybe he just wants you to walk with him. Like Job's guys, although they spoke actual truth, right? Everything they said was very truthful, if you will. It may have not been accurate for the circumstance that was happening, but it was truthful, if you will. It was by the book. It was very academic. But the reality is that he just needed someone to walk with him and not, try to either judge him or, smooth it over. Either way.
We'll try to figure out, why is this happening to you, right? Well, it must be this or it must be this. And sometimes the Lord's doing a work in your life you don't understand, and maybe no one else does either. And it's okay to say, like, I'm not sure why this is happening, but we're going to walk with you through it.
Yeah, I think we need that. And that's why possibly a lot of people fail in the trial of their faith, possibly because they isolate and possibly because they just try to walk through it, a soldier of God, I'm doing this on my own. And meanwhile, God's like, he's actually providing so that in the trial of your faith, there's help. It's very interesting. Years ago, right after dirt was invented, and I was a young man, I used to work out with weights, and I worked out with another brother. And whenever I think about the trial of my faith, I think about that time. I think about working out your muscle, like working out what it takes to get there. And it's not easy, it can be broken down into very simple things, but having somebody with you, helping to just walk it through with you, sometimes inspire you. Yes, there's that component of it too. But just to be with you and just see you through it, and sometimes train you through it. It's amazing how you grow, how your muscles grow in the natural, how you strengthen yourself. And that's why, the Bible, like the scripture you just read, the count it all joy. The joy of the Lord is our strength. It's the thing that, so he's looking, all of the trial is, the testing is actually to prove not to God so much, because God gets, he knows, right? He knows the beginning from the end. But it's actually, I believe, to prove to us who we are.
And those that watch our lives,
Right.
that we have an influence upon.
Yeah.
Right.
And it shows us, is our faith in God or in God's blessing?
Right.
Whatever that thing is that we hold on to.
Well, I was going to say that when you're talking about Job, I believe the Lord knew that about Job. I'm not sure Job knew that about himself, actually.
Yeah.
I think, trials, they definitely reveal things.
Oh, yeah.
They reveal what we actually believe. They reveal things that we didn't realize we were dependent on, that we put our faith in, that we're unsure, unstable. And when those things get removed or things get rocked, it does cause us to reevaluate and to question, okay, where is my faith? What is it actually rooted on? And is it rooted in something that's not going to fail me?
It also, I believe, exposes what you're actually capable of.
Yeah, that's
capable
very true.
of either enduring or busting through. Like I'm going to go back to the old workout thing, mostly because I don't work out and I should. But I remember when my friend finally provoked me after a while of training to lift 250 pounds. And I was like, well, early on, 100 would have sounded a lot. Okay. When it got to the day when we're doing the 250, and I'm like, okay. And I remember like lifting it and realizing this thing's like holding a car up. It had so much pressure back against you, and then being able to drop it and then lift it back up again. And then all of a sudden it revealed to me how far in the natural I had progressed, or how much I'm able to or capable of handling. And I believe the trial of our faith actually does that, which by the way, and I'm sure Pastor David's going to bring us there in some way. I mean, I'll just throw us there to begin with. A lot of people try to avoid trial.
Yes.
Now, I'm not suggesting you run out looking for a trial. You don't have to actually go look. But so many people like try to avoid it at all costs. Like that's it's like a bad, evil thing in Christianity. And it's like, and he's like, no, the trial of your faith is building things in you. It's revealing things in you.
Yeah. Why is God putting these trials in our lives? Why is he permitting them if he loves us, right? Because like you're saying, people want to avoid them because they think, oh, if God really loves me, I wouldn't go through these trials. So maybe you guys could speak a little bit to what are the benefits of enduring a trial? Like if you don't break in the trial, like what benefits are going to come into your life? Like, what do you think? On that, Liz?
Well, yeah, first of all, I just want to say that just because you're experiencing a trial doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Right. That because I think that's a comment like, why is this happening? There must be something wrong in my life that God is allowing this. And it's like, no, he's interested in your growth. This is actually part of the process. It's not a punishment, and it's not even a indicator that something is, that you're doing something, that you're off somewhere. I mean, I'm sure we all are, but those things come out, but it's not necessarily a response to something you're doing wrong in your life. It's actually the goodness of God because he's interested in growing us into maturity, right? That's his whole goal. And I love this passage in Romans 5. It says that, we celebrate and in hope of the glory of God. And not only this, we celebrate in our trials, our testings, knowing that this testing brings about perseverance. The testing develops perseverance in my life. This is actually the way that it happens, is because I get tested and I realize, like you were saying, oh, I can endure this. There's something that develops in me where I make a determination to persevere through, and perseverance develops a proven character.
Yes.
Right? Because now I know, and other people know, there's something that's proven about that person. They've endured, they've persevered, and now there's a proven quality about them. And proven character develops hope, and hope that does not disappoint.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing because when we go through these testings, and we may be in the middle of them and we're not quite sure, but we decide, I'm going to persevere anyway. I'm going to continue to walk with the Lord. I'm not going to pull away from him. I'm not going to pull away from the church, the people of God. I'm going to walk through this. Develops perseverance, develops patience, develops character, but then also brings us to a place of hope. And that, I think, is one of the key benefits of walking through a trial. It actually develops hope in you. And the next time you walk through a trial, you can endure more because you're like, oh, there's hope on the other side of this thing. And I know it's there, and I know it's not going to disappoint me. And I know this may not be easy to walk through it, but I know that there's a purpose in it. I know it's developing things in me that I couldn't develop on my own. And there's something to look forward to. Then that's why you can have joy, right? That Jesus said, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. And it's the same for us. There's a hope on the other side. Not only for our lives, but we can speak that into people, because we've walked through it now. We've endured it.
And one of the ways it does that, I believe, is it purges and burns away the false hopes that we have. True. When you go through a health crisis, a financial crisis, persecution, emotional problems, relational problems, you see what you've been putting your hope in. Like, oh, if that person just likes me, then I'll be happy. Oh, if I just achieve this, I'll be happy. If I have this much stuff, oh man, all my stuff's gone now. Like, it really purges out. It's a fire that purges away the false things that you're hoping in. And if you keep walking with God, you're going to fall back into him, and you're going to say, like the psalmist said, you're my hiding place and my shield. In you I take refuge. He was, I believe David wrote that. It doesn't say at the start of the psalm, but David went through many trials of his faith. To bring him to that place of relying on God as his hope. I did just want to speak to you said, like, it's not necessarily that you did something wrong that you're in a trial, but I think somebody might be thinking, well, I did do something wrong. And now I've brought my life to God, but I've done things in the past. And even as a follower of God, I did something. So I think this is really God, allowing punishment or allowing discipline in my life. It could be discipline, but it is another opportunity for your faith to be tried. Even if you did something wrong, how are you going to respond to that, right? It says in Proverbs, a righteous man falls 7 times, but he will rise again. David had his trial in the cave when he spared Saul's life, and he's doing awesome, and he killed Goliath and blah, blah, blah. He beat all those trials, but he had another trial that he completely failed, when he stole Uriah's wife, and he hid that for a year, but then he was called out for it, and how he responded to that trial set the direction for the rest of his life, and it allowed him to still be remembered as a man after God's own heart and still have a legacy, because even though he'd done something horrible, he could still stand that faith. So I just want to give maybe somebody hope that's listening to that and they say, this is all my fault. Well, no, still your faith can rise there. It's a perfect place for your faith to rise.
Absolutely. And when the Lord brings correction, it's not designed to kill you or destroy you. It's like a good father. And by the way, you might deserve it. You may have brought it on yourself. So we don't want to make believe like, oh no, this something befell me. It's always the devil. It could be you.
Right.
You brought the trial on you. And now there's this thing called consequences. And some of those consequences are just natural consequences, but they're actually part of God's law, his life, if you will, or just natural in the world, like you jump off a building, you fall.
Right.
Yes. You're tempting God, but you're falling.
Right.
But the reality is that God's not doing that to you to wreck you and crush you, other than maybe take away from you the things you falsely relied on.
Yes.
Right, and the things that won't sustain you in the long run, like you were saying, Pastor David, that there's that burning away, that taking away of the things that really, if you learn to rely on those things, you relying on the flesh is what's happening, and not on God, then if you don't get that, if you don't see it, and like I said, you may have caused it to come on yourself, and God now is, as a good father, really helping you. He's helping you see it, deal with it, maybe walk through the consequences. And by the way, some of those consequences could last a long time. I don't want to do this whole nice cutesy podcast like, oh, you just ask God to forgive you and everything is okay.
You'd be in prison for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's just not. And but yet we have a God in heaven that cares for us so much that he's gonna take care of those things. I wanted to say also that I believe that those when trials come, they actually come to reveal in you and through you the fruits of the Spirit. Like, I don't believe they actually get revealed just poof out of the blue. Like you're just sitting there one day and all of a sudden, fruits of the Spirit, everything.
Yeah,
I think that there's a process that is a trial process, partly, that actually brings that into the now, into the reality of your life. And we have to see that even when you screwed up, even when you did something like Pastor David was saying, wrong. And then if you just go, oh, it's wrong, and you get all depressed and now it's the end, now you're allowing the enemy to speak into your life like that's the end, rather than God saying, hey, I can use that and work everything out for good. Those that trust God are called according to his purposes. There's a couple of things that go with that, stipulations, but not just, this is not the end. This could be the beginning. Yeah. Actually.
I think that speaks to when it said Romans about the perseverance part. The perseverance part isn't you have to do everything perfect. It just means you stick with it. Right. Like you're like a plant stays in the soil, not like, oh, I'm not sure. Let me pull myself out for a bit. Oh no, I'm back in. No, I'm back out. The plant that like in that state of being is never going to produce fruit. Right. But the one that perseveres, that just sticks with it, then there's the proven character, which is what you're talking about. Like the characteristics of God begin to manifest. They're proven, they're shown at that point. But that only comes through remaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fruits that remain.
You remain in the consuming fire, and he will burn it away. Because to me, it's a preview of the final judgment.
Yes.
Because it says in 1 Corinthians 3, all our work is going to be tried by fire. It's going to be
Right.
shown whether it's gold or jewels or wood or hay or something combustible or not. And when we go through trials on earth, it gives us a preview of like, how are we going to do on that day? And I'd rather have it
Just bring us to
burned
the
out of me
judgment.
now.
I love it.
I'd rather have it burned out of me now than
Right,
wait
right.
until Judgment Day and have to deal with it then. And there's a whole thing of purgatory and Catholicism, but we believe that this life is the purgatory because it burns it out of us, and you have to see it that way.
Wait,
it's not
3 Hail
some
Marys
future
and I'm out of
thing.
Can
life.
someone get me
I know.
out?
And you got to endure. There's no way out but through. There's,
I love it. Purgatory.
there's no way out but
That's funny.
through of that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, going through. And when you walk through the fire and you walk through the flood, he will be with you
Yeah.
in the middle of that. It's a great thing.
So that's really good. He will be there. We're not going through the fire ourselves like the 3 Hebrew boys. We could preach a whole sermon off this. He'll be with us in the fire. But we talked about maybe some of the things that we can root and anchor our lives in that get burned away in those trials. What should our faith be in? And maybe what are some things that we're tempted to put our trust in, our faith in as church-going people, right? We can have other things that we anchor our faith in. What do you think? Is there a danger in that of rooting our faith in things other than God? And
Well, the
help
one
me
I
out
run
here.
into all the time is I put my faith only in me at times. I don't know about you guys, but
Right.
your own understanding, my own. I'm not going to make it I'm going to make it personal. My own understanding, the way I see it, the way I think it should go. When I'm setting up my own little religion with Bob God, and no, seriously, right? That's a real thing, and if we have to understand that we when
just
we
seeing a bobblehead.
bobblehead
Bob God.
Cheese in front of it.
I love it. You guys are crazy. But yeah, I think my own understanding and my own belief system, I can many times put that completely in front of God's word and how he's seeing things. And then, how do you go through those trials? I mean, what do you deal with that? And so, yeah.
Yeah,
If you
I think there's
ask
a
him.
lot of things that you can put your faith in, your hope in, without even totally realizing that you're doing it. And then it's then the trial comes and it brings you back like, oh shoot, I was hoping in this, right? It's easy. You can hope in other people, you can hope in yourself, you can hope in your abilities, have faith in your own abilities. That's a big one. Your performance. There's a lot of things I think to be hopeful, and even things like prophetic word.
Oh yeah.
You could put your hope so much in that you forget that your faith is actually supposed to be rooted in the Lord and only Him, and not in that, not in the promise.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we can get our faith tied so much to the promise, and then the Lord brings us back like Abraham, like, okay, yeah, I gave you that promise. Is that what your faith is? Or are you willing to sacrifice it and still only have me?
That's strong.
That's
Well, I also, we can so much put our faith in our own understanding.
Yeah.
And, God talks about, I give you a good understanding of those that, keep my commandments, and, they'll have a good understanding, and it's tied to keeping yourself with him. And that goes back to that enduring thing that you were talking about earlier, is like go through the end of the trial of your faith, not just the beginning. We're all good at starting, but the end never comes. And so we have to be the kind of people who also don't just trust in our own understanding, our own little belief system, our own how we see it, because then we may be putting ourselves in a trial that we don't belong in, that we bringing on ourselves a trial that there's not a great way out, because you're doing it in your own thinking.
One of the funniest scriptures on that is in Peter, where it says, "Let no one suffer as a meddler."
Yes.
Thinking that he's being persecuted. As people say, like, "Oh, people are persecuting me. Everyone's against me," but you're meddling in people's problems. Like you're just anyway. So we need to.
Yeah, personally, I have such a hard time when Christians are. It's the trial of my faith, and I'm plowing through it, and I hope to make it. Meanwhile, the deal, if it's really a trial from God, and when you really think about another thing, I always use natural examples for myself, but when you, the term trying, like trying a rope for its strength, it's been tried. I think even in the Bible, some guy tried to put somebody else's, armor on him, and he says, "I haven't been tried." It's in other words, I haven't been tested. I don't know what I'm doing here with this thing. It doesn't fit right. It's not. And so the deal is, I think about it like a rope or cable that until it's been pulled on and tested to a certain level, like, it can handle 10,000 pounds, right? Till it's tested and proven, you can't trust it. Like, you're not going to go climb El Capitan with a little string and go, "Oh yeah, I
should hold.
I'm believing God. I'm believing God for this string." I mean, you could, I guess, have that kind of faith.
Well, another word that's used, and it's like when you're building a building, right? When they do welds, there's someone that comes out to test the integrity of the weld to see if it's going to hold.
Yes.
And this is really they get down to the essence of the trial. It tests your integrity.
Yes.
What are you made of? Where are the weak spots? Where are the places that need to be shored up here? And who will you remain true in the middle of the testing? Will you hold?
Yeah, because people are relying on the fact in Christianity, the way God set it up actually is, yes, we rely on him and his faithfulness and his greatness and his ability to deliver us out of things and all that. But he's also, in the body of Christ, what he's really wanting from us is that we can actually have enough integrity, and that's tested through trial, right? That we can be a dependable individual, someone that people can trust in. Like, the deal is this. I don't know about you, but somebody's flaky. Like, if they haven't been tested, I don't trust what they're going to say or tell me to do. I don't trust that. I'm like, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, like a fool, like, leaning on a staff and it breaks and it goes through your hand and cuts you. And the story there and the lesson there is, you don't lean on something that's not tested. You don't, because if you do, it will hurt you. And so really the trial of your faith is actually to prove you and test you, so that not just God, because God knows you, but to prove to people around you that you can be counted on, that you can be, like, matter of fact, even in the middle of your trial, you can be counted on. That's a whole different level.
And you can be compassionate.
Right. Because people want to excuse themselves. I'm in a trial. I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not anything. Everything I'm supposed to be, I'm not anymore. I'm not going to be help to that person. I'm not going to do this. I'm bouncing out of church because I'm in a trial. It's like, really?
And that may be the case because you may be getting pruned, like it says in John 15, that some things were cut off that you used to do, and you no longer do those. They could be ministries, right? They could be amazing things that you think you no longer can do, and those dreams are dead. But if you learn about pruning, when the branch grows back, it grows back thicker and stronger, and it can bear way more fruit and heavier fruit than it could before. So when you're going through that season, like Liz said, you can't just press eject. Like you have to abide even in the middle of the pruning,
abiding in the vine,
and trust God and His wisdom that He's bringing about something, which can be difficult. I did want to ask about people, that if faith can depend on people, like what's the danger in that? Because I see that like a lot in the church, like people attach their faith to personalities or people. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that, dangers within.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird thing. I've been thinking about this a lot, that our faith is supposed to be in the Lord solely, right? He's the source of our faith. He's the author. He's the finisher of our faith. And there is this, but we are also part of a body, right? And the body's pretty dependent on the other parts of the body for life, right? I mean, it's kind of this weird, I don't know, like paradox there of like, being your faith being in the Lord, but also being able to depend on the rest of the body to help you in your faith walk and to help build your faith in some ways and to share your faith with each other. So it shouldn't be dependent on, like, my faith should not be so rooted in a person that if they fail, my faith fails.
Right.
Right. But I don't know how you guys would express it.
I look at
like
it, the word tells us trust in the Lord, don't lean on your own understanding. That's the first part of it, but to trust in him in all our ways and our thinking. But it does not disavow Ephesians that talks about us being part of the body of Christ, which every joint supplies to the body of Christ. It supplies the life of God, actually allows the life of God to flow, right? That's just like my finger, if I pulled it off and put it over there, it's not going to unattach, it's not going to work. So we have to see that we have a dependency on God. And we are also developing trust in the church, but it can't be a stupid trust. Stupid is a weird word. I can't think of any better word than that. Okay, it's the second time I've said that today, I think. But it's a trust in someone that's been tried and tested, right? I can depend on that person, and so there is that. It's a balance, and it's matter of fact, it's not a balance that we came up with. It's a balance that God came up with because he's made us to be dependent on him. And also he's coming back for a glorious church, one without spot or wrinkle. Things got worked out. In other words, there might've been spots and wrinkles, right? So things had to get worked. And so that process it's not spiffy clean and everything's beautiful. But the trial of our faith is what actually exposes that and brings that into its greatness. And so, I don't believe we can, just have faith in God and just ignore people. I just don't believe that works out really well.
No, I think just something, people coming up, like you said, they definitely are going to depend on people. Hopefully it's people with proven character and track record, not just gifted people. But I think it's more of a word to people who are in those positions of trust, that people are depending on you and people are looking to you, and to take it seriously and to pray. There's a psalm where David says, "Let not those who hope in you be put to shame because of me." And seriously pray that before God. Like, Lord, help me remain steadfast. Also, and how you're training people, if you're one that's making disciples or you're a leader in the church, leading people always to Jesus and not to you, and letting them know I'm a human being. And, they'll know that if they're in a relationship with you, that'll be pretty clear. But making it, having them test what you say by the word, making the word the ultimate standard, representing Jesus to them and say, I'm imitating him. You can imitate me, but we're really imitating him. And I think it's more of a word. If you realize that people are depending on you and people's faith is rooted in you, that's on you. It's not necessarily on them to be more in love with Jesus. It's on you to teach them that, and on you to model a certain way of leadership. Or even Jesus is like, hey, I'm going to leave you guys. Like, you're going to have to trust the Holy Spirit. I'm not always going to be with you. You need to be able to walk with the Holy Spirit. That was how he taught. So I just want to ask you guys, have you guys ever gone through a trial of your faith? Have you ever gone through one, Bob?
He said just one.
Okay, just one. And you
just
had one,
but
too,
it's lasted for 68
years.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't have to share much about it, but as you're sharing about it, I just wanted to see if you would give some keys of what helps you walk through those trials.
How personal do you want to get on this?
You could go
how transparent,
raw, man, as much as you want to do.
Okay, so I don't know if you've noticed it, but I don't have any hair. That's not because I shaved my hair. That's because I actually have a thing called alopecia that all my hair went away. I actually had a lot of hair. My hair was thick, like Liz's here, and right up till I was about 40 years old. And now, over a course of 7 years, I lost all my hair, just all over. It just went away. Sometimes it comes back in little pieces and things. It was very interesting because during that time, and for some time afterward, my faith was being tried because here I am, a person in the house of God, a minister, and I'm supposed to have faith for people, like people, which was really odd. And this is when I knew it was God. Besides, side note, I believe God was dealing with my pride. Just a little side note, like he was with Job. But in the process, he was also dealing with my faith. And I remember it was constant, and it made me a little crazy for a while, but people would come to me for prayer, for healing. Mm. And I'm like, did you notice that I'm not healed? Now I'm being very transplanted. It's a rough trial of your faith when people are coming to you, because they're looking for God to heal them. By the way, that also puts your trial of your faith puts you in perspective, like you're not the healer. God's the healer. He can use anything or anyone if you're a vessel yielded, all that kind of, there's a lot of things you learn in the trial of your faith. So I'm bringing up that one because it's very, very personal because it lasted for so long. And the process, well, actually, it never went away. I'd like to say that, then it just went away and all my hair grew back. And it's like, no, it never did. And which is really interesting with alopecia because the follicles are actually alive. They're just asleep. Okay, which might be a whole nother story. But I remember people coming and having to wrestle in myself about, can I actually pray for this person with faith? And the pride part, like, are they depending on me? That's a real serious trial of your faith, right? I mean, like, there were so many things that happened in my soul in that process. So, like I said, I don't know if you meant it to go this deep. We can cut this out of the podcast. It might be too freaky for some people, but the reality is that and that's one. There have been, there have been lots of others, but that one sticks out immediately because my faith, the way I believed was being tested there. Like, did I really trust God was healing people? And even if I didn't look like I was healed, he's still a healer. And I could still be used by God in the process of person being healed, being delivered, being strengthened, being spoken to about faith. Like, you don't know how many times I had to speak and preach about faith. And meanwhile, my faith was totally being stretched. And this is a very, like I said, it's a very, I know it's weird, but it's a very personal thing. And it was a trial over a long time. And very few things in my life have worked like that.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, thank you.
What about you, Liz?
Have you ever had a trial, and how did you get through it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was thinking, some of the, I have testimonies, like really dramatic things, I guess, and physical things, but those actually didn't try my faith as much as some of the other. I felt like in those times, like when it was life or death situations, the Lord actually gave me this supernatural grace to walk through it. And so it was like my faith felt very sure, actually, even though I was almost dying. Right. It was very strange. The things that have actually tried my faith the most, I think, are relational things, relational disappointments, places where I had expectations or faith for things. And it catches me off guard every time when I feel like it's not an attack from the enemy. It's not an attack from, a demonic thing. It's actually an attack from someone, or not an attack, but a trial from someone that I really love, and where I feel either rejected by them, or I feel like I had an expectation of something that didn't flesh out. And so those, or where they begin to question my motives, and I'm like, wow, I'm giving my life to this, serving the Lord. Now you're questioning what I'm about. It's like those are the things that actually try my faith the most. Yeah. And it's, for me, it's the thing. It's not the things that come from the outside, the demonic things or the devil things. It's from the people that I love, and that's really hard. And I have to go to the Lord with that, and because for me, it like shakes the very foundation of like what I'm giving my life to. And so I have to go to the Lord, and I have to be like, he has to do that emptying thing. And then he reveals like where I've misplaced some of my hope or my expectations, or where I had expectations that weren't from him. And they were just from my own beliefs. And what I was depending on from people rather than what I should have been just depending on from him.
Yeah.
And I also have very trusted friends that I will speak to about this. Yeah. About those things, and they speak faith into my life, and they grieve with me a little bit too. It's not like this, like, oh, it's gonna be fine. Just push it down. Just whatever. It's like, man, that must have really hurt, but God is faithful. And so that's for me been so critical. Not that my faith is in them, but they are an extension of God's grace to me, and they bring their faith when mine is shaking. So those are the word, of course, is like, it's just such a sure thing. The word is such an anchor. It's such an unchanging security in my life that it's like, no matter what's changing, that is always the same, and it's always true. And it's always stable. There's anything that's unstable about the word of God. So when it feels like everything else is in question, man, the word is always the place to go for me.
Well, I think also many times the trial of our faith is rooted in this, where you're disappointed.
Yeah.
You're disappointed in people. You're disappointed in God. Like, I know we shouldn't be judging God. I can sit here and say that now, but right in the middle of the trial, and people listening to this, they are disappointed. Some may be disappointed in God. Yeah. Like they thought it was going to be one way, and then now it's a whole nother way, and like, why me kind of thing. And the reality is that with people, even when we're disappointed in them, when we wanted to lean on them and it didn't work out quite the way we thought, because it was what we thought it should be, we still love them. Yeah. Like, bring ourselves to the place of still loving them. When we're disappointed in God, how we bring ourselves to the place of still loving him. Yeah. Though you slay me, so yet will I praise you. There's a place where we bring, and that's the trial of our faith, right? That's, God, I'm yours. Our trial of our faith with the Lord, I'm yours, and I'm yours. Okay, so I don't care how it may be ugly here, but I'm still yours. I bring myself. I'm there. That's where you see the real strength in a person's faith develop, that through the trial, and especially because we're people, with folks, and like you say, I mentioned they disappoint you, and yet can you still love them? Right. And I mean with the pure love of God, like really care for their souls, rather than just like, I'm done with you and you're gone and there you go. Right.
that would be the easy way. Just cut. I'm good at that. But the Lord, he doesn't let me do that anymore. And so it is, and it's a pouring out of emptying, because even in the place of being wronged, there's still a self-focus there, right? There's still, the Lord is still bringing me back to like, wow, you're still, yes, that was wrong, but your pride was hurt. Your feeling, it's my focus, not. And he always has to redirect. Okay, now what about like what is in them that needs to be cared for? Yeah. And then that's the way I've learned. He's taught me how to get out of that, is to go and serve them, humble yourself, love them, care for their souls, and that actually like delivers me out of that self-focused, place.
You mean we don't just call down fire from heaven? Darn.
Yeah. Persevering through that is so key. I've been through some trials, like even recently, like a year ago, I would say it ended. But before that, I was going through about 4 years of just insane trials of faith. And like being in a place where I was experiencing, like leaving a former area where I had lots of friends and family and support. There was a little bit of isolation. There was all the COVID stuff that happened. there were disappointments in certain relationships and certain dreams that I had that completely fell through. Somehow I got listening to things that were talking about, psychologizing the gospel and the scriptures, and to the point where I believed, like, in certain times, number one, that God had completely let me down and was against me and was punishing me. Or on other days, I believed that it was all a self-delusion. I had just completely tricked myself into believing it, and I was a pastor. And so I was preaching at the same time all this was happening. So I felt like a complete fraud and a total hypocrite and like a professional hireling. And so I went through that. It was like, it's over now, thankfully. I can say that. I wasn't really talking about it with people because there's a time and a place for that. Didn't want to ruin people. I was going through it, but, was able to talk to certain people. But I remember there was one day that when I finally came out of it was I was going to just completely chuck everything. And I was like, but I know I've experienced the presence of God, and I just wanted to feel it one more time. I was like, even if I'm tricking myself into feeling this, I just want to feel it one more time. And I was listening to worship on YouTube. I've never shared this. But I was listening to this Josh Garrels song that's called "The Long Way Home." It just came up, and it's about someone going back to their father just to say goodbye to him. And I was literally doing that. I was literally going back to God to be like, that was it. Like, I'm going. And it blew me away. And I was like, I just heard his voice. So he was like, you're not going anywhere,
Yeah.
And it was just my relationship with Jesus was the only thing that brought me through. Like, even when I didn't believe his word, like there was times I didn't even believe his word. Like, I thought it was all like the product of mythologies put together from Ugaritic texts. And like, I was like, I just believed all this stuff. Like, and it's something you got to deal with. Like, I can look back at it now and say, like, I see that those things are not accurate. Like, there's truth in the word of God. I believe it even more now than I did before. Yeah. So many benefits came from that. Like, and yet it was so hard to go through it and to be like, am I going to be somebody that burns out and that quits and that, but the only thing that helped me, and what I would tell other pastors and other ministers, is the only thing that will help you is to commune with God, even if it's the last thing that you want to do. Even if you have to fast to do it, even if you have to, like, I remember at one point my friend was like, what would you tell yourself to do? Because I was sharing with him, and I was like, I'd probably tell myself to fast and to pray, and I don't want to do that. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. But I like started following my own advice, and then that led me to seek after his presence one more time, and then the Lord got me, and then I started reading the word again, and I started, and he just rebuilt me. The whole time I was persevering because I did believe. I've been through other trials. I did believe that it would end. But at this point, I kind of, like, at the moment, I completely lost hope, and he still kept me. And that's what I want to say to people is, like, you might think you're about to fall, but he will keep you. Like, even if you fall, he'll still be there. So I just wanted to, I haven't shared that before. I don't know.
That's a great sharing.
I just,
I appreciate
he's
that.
faithful to keep you.
Yeah, he is.
So
it's not up to us to
your
get through
title didn't keep you.
No.
Your title of being a pastor.
It doesn't keep a lot of people.
Yeah, people
better than me.
Yeah, we rely on things that will fail us.
So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll talk more about this in the future. It's worth developing, and because I think a lot of people go through trial. I know every Christian does.
Right.
But if you stay in communion and experience who God is, I'll just end with this verse that says in John 7, it says, if anyone's will is to do the will of God, he'll know that the teaching is from God.
Yeah.
And if you're with God, you're going to want to do his will, and it will validate all his truth. If you stay isolated from him and you allow disappointment or darkness or anything to crush you or doubt, you will become double-minded, and you will wither on the vine. You will not abide. So thank you for joining us on this podcast. See you next time. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episode. And for more information, visit spiritschoolofministry.com.